Mr. Chairman, it's 9:01 and we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Would you please do a roll call? Oh,
Yes, Scott Howard,
present.
John Postick,
Present.
Michelle Dean,
Present.
Jonathan Heisel,
Present.
John Joyce, do you need to star 6, John? I can't tell if John is hearing us. Barbara Larson.
Present.
Oh, I got John Postick listed twice. That's what it is. Dana Templeton.
Present.
Gloria Torres.
Present.
Excuse me, Mark. Mr.
Mr.
Joyce?
Chairman, you have a quorum. Yes, ma'am?
I'm sorry, Mr. Joyce, your phone was not unmuted. We are seeing you on the screen, but we did not hear you answer the quorum call. And that isn't working. So you might try on your computer. I don't know if you're muted on the, I don't know what's happening at that end, because I'm unable to unmute you.
He's unmuted on our screen.
Yeah, he's showing up as muted on mine, but there it is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, there you go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark, for the roll call. Before I go on to the minutes, I've got a statement to read off. Welcome to the May 7th, 2020 meeting of the Riverfront Design Committee. This is the City of Oklahoma City's first video conferenced Riverfront Design Committee meeting. My name is Scott Howard. I am the chair of the committee. As you are aware, during the state of emergency in place during the COVID-19 pandemic, no physical location will be provided for the Riverfront Design Committee meeting. The meeting will instead be live streamed from remote locations. We want to request that everyone, except committee members, keep your mic or phone muted until you are called on to speak. As instructed in the agenda, those who called or emailed us in advance to let us know your name, contact number, and agenda items that you wish to speak about will be recognized first. Before the RDC votes on each item, I will ask if any members of the public wish to speak. Anyone speaking will be given 3 minutes to speak. Since you are muted, when I call on you, please unmute yourself. On a phone, you will press *6 and then state your name and address for the record before you speak. On a desktop or laptop, you will hover your cursor over the microphone icon to remove the diagonal red line. If we lose our connection for this meeting, the meeting shall be stopped and reconvened once the connection is restored. If communications are unable to be restored within 30 minutes, items remaining for consideration will be continued to the next regularly scheduled Riverfront Design Committee meeting on Thursday, June 4th, 2020 at 9 a.m. by video conference. The agenda and documents are located on okc.gov. Now I would entertain a motion for approval of minutes.
And Mr. Chairman, let me just remind you, you're making a motion and a second on the revised minutes that you all received.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Yes, this is for motion for the revised.
I'd like to make a motion that the amended minutes from last meeting are approved.
Is that Dana Templeton?
Barbara
No.
Larson.
Okay, I'm showing that Dana Templeton moved and John Postick seconded. Do I need to change that?
We can change it.
Okay.
Oh,
Well, we'll change that later. Who moved and who seconded then, please?
That was Barbara Larson did the motion.
Hi, this is John Postic. Can I ask for clarification? Should we be making motions verbally or via the online PrimeGov system?
The online PrimeGov system.
Okay, so just for clarification for those of us, that means instead of giving a verbal motion, they're just going to be pressing or clicking on the buttons. Am I correct?
So, Laura, this is Katie. What we did
Yes.
yesterday that seemed to work well is make a verbal motion just like you normally would, so that the clerk knows what motion to indicate in PrimeGov, because the clerk has to select approve, deny, recommend, etc. Then once you've made that verbal motion and the motion has been selected in PrimeGov, then you will click that you motioned, the next person will click that they've seconded, and then everyone will vote. So you have to kind of pause and have a little more patience than we normally do with our verbal votes and wait for it to give you that opportunity to motion and to second, and then it'll allow everyone else to vote. The motion and the second, I believe, shows up as a square, and when you vote, it's a circle. So if you didn't try to wait for the person who motioned to go ahead and select that. Mark, please provide other direction if you'd rather than do it another way, but that seemed to work well yesterday.
Right, and if the person is not in PrimeGov, then they can do it verbally, and we'll note that on there. But I'm getting ready to open the vote now, and we will change the who moved and who seconded in our minutes.
Well, first of all, I think we still need some clarification because we had a verbal by Barbara, and then we had a clarification question, so we didn't have a verbal second.
What did you have?
This is John Postic. I will verbally second the motion.
Thank you, John.
All right, thank you.
And that needs to be amended on PrimeGov to say Barbara Larson, moved by Barbara Larson. Or do you need me to move?
We can amend that in the minutes.
Okay.
Okay. So any further discussion? I guess let's go ahead and vote.
Laura, just to clarify, I do not vote yet, correct? Because I have not been sworn in.
Here's the issue. We have two members who were wanting to abstain from voting because they were not officially at last month's meeting. So I'm not sure if we call for the vote, we obviously have one member who's not on PrimeGov, so we somehow need to capture his vote. And then we have two people who I believe do want to abstain. And I guess when we summarize the votes, we need to make sure we capture that and we get a verbal from both Brian and Gloria on the abstention. Thank you, Gloria.
John Heisel, how are you voting?
Affirmative.
Okay, and then who else is voting abstain?
So, being that I've not sworn in yet, should I still vote?
Okay, let me clarify.
Even
The
if it's
paperwork
an
was all
abstain?
forwarded. I'm sorry, this is Laura. The paperwork was all forwarded to the city clerk's office for both Brian and Gloria. So you all are on the committee. We just need to capture that you're going to be abstaining from this vote on the minutes.
I recall the signature now. I apologize. Yes.
That's okay.
Okay, Brian is not present, so we just have
Yes.
Gloria as abstaining.
Yes.
So I'm going to close the vote. The motion passed. I'm saving.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. The chair would like to make or entertain a motion to move item 8A, number 1, to the next item. Can I get a motion?
Second.
Well,
This is John Postic. I move to move item 8A on the agenda to the next item of business.
thank you, John. Then
One moment, please. I'm needing to get that vote. So you're moving that. What are we? I did activate.
This is Katie. Jonathan, your email and your login for PrimeGov has been reset by IT, and they've sent you an email if you want to check that and try to log into PrimeGov again.
Thank you.
So do we need to wait on that, or I think we had a motion, a second?
This is Laura. Who was that second? Was that Gloria?
Yes.
Okay. So we had John Postic made the motion and Gloria made the second to move item, okay, 8A1.
Oh, yeah, okay. No, open it.
Okay, any other discussion about moving that? If not, let's
I did.
call a vote.
Okay. Jonathan Heisel, how do you vote?
Agree. Approved.
Close vote. Save and close. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we have a presentation by Hargraves Jones for the MAP 3 Lower Park. I believe we have Gavin McMillan as a presenter on the line.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. All right, let me use the magic of technology to try and share my screen.
Oh. So Gavin, this is Laura.
Yeah.
And they have in front of them right now in a PowerPoint all of those pages that you submitted for the presentation.
Oh, okay. So
I don't understand technology. So as far as you being able to share your screen, somebody else would need to speak to that. But all of those pages that were submitted are available up on the screen.
okay. Let's do that then.
Do you see those?
Yes. If we can go to the beginning, that'd be great.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's been a long road to get here. And even though the lower park is coming last out of the ensemble, it's part of the whole bigger picture of connecting the core to shore, as you all remember. We've been really satisfied with how the upper park turned out. And as you recall, way back when in master planning, the idea was not only to connect to the river from core to shore, but to offer two kind of different feels. The upper park was obviously more active and intense and heavily used. And the lower park was meant to complement that by being a little more relaxed and less programmed. But it has a different program. And if we go to the next slide, the difference in the lower park is in the what we call the panhandle up against I-40 is a sports program, which the upper park does not have. So that came out of the original master planning process. And in fact, the plans at the moment have room for one soccer field and different courts, one being 2 basketball courts, pickleball courts, and a futsal court. And that's come out of working with not only the foundation, but also some interested sporting groups and sport foundations in the city. So for those of you who remember the original planning, they were actually up north a little bit more, but we wanted to save as many of the existing trees possible, which I believe was the last presentation that you saw in the progress of the design thinking. So we were able to do that by moving the sports courts just down a little bit from south of 10th Street, which we have. So now the continuous promenade, which should start in the upper park, goes across Skydance Bridge and goes all the way down to 15th Street. So that's the continuity between upper and lower. The same finishes, the same light masts, but one pathway peels off and goes to the sports courts area. Within the sports court area, there is a building that we're calling the Sports Pavilion. It has a roof of about 5,500 square feet and an internal building footprint of about 1,700 square feet, which we'll talk about later. As we keep going down past the sports courts to between 11th and 12th, the promenade goes past what's known as the Cusack lot, which is an out parcel in the scheme at the moment. And it continues down to what we're calling the fields between 14th and 12th Street, which is low key grass and a wandering woodland walkway between that. In the last block between 14th and 15th is what we're calling the Overlook Hill. We had an earth mound there originally in the scheme, but we made it bigger. So it's 29 feet high. So basically, we did this for two reasons. One, as a landmark, which it will be, but when people go up and stand on top of it, they're at the same height as the Skydance Bridge floor. So you will be able to see Union Station and linking to the upper park. But you also have better views of the Oklahoma River as well, because as you recall, 15th Street acts like a levee. So it's quite higher. So in most of the park, you can't actually see the river. So we wanted to create a landform where people can go up and make sure they see the river, but also the connection back to downtown. And for those of you who have walked up the hill on the oval in the upper park, the Great Lawn, people love doing that. They love the wind in their hair. So we're looking forward to that as a feature. Just north of the hill, what we're calling Knuckle Plaza. So the promenade comes down in an arc, and it kind of turns at what we're calling the Knuckle Plaza. And this is a great place for the next public art piece that will happen. And also a great place to have the second building in the park that we call the Hill Pavilion, which provides restrooms and some storage and office space for the staff. And I'll show you that in a minute. It's a little smaller than the Sports Pavilion, but it kind of ends it all. So at 15th Street, at the moment, we have pedestrian crossings on Robinson and Harvey, which will make the connection to the existing Riverfront Park. So we don't go past 15th, but the whole of Lower Park is 6 blocks long. It's 1 block longer than the Upper Park, so it's 1 block less wide. So it's quite narrow, but it's long, and it makes a great experience. So on Robinson and Harvey and 10th, we're using continuing with the Project 180 streetscape. So that's continuous between the upper and the lower park. So let's just flip through some of the drawings here. This is just basically showing emergency vehicle access. It was a really strong thing we had to plan for in the upper park, and that will continue through the lower park. Here's the different courts and the accessibility requirements. We only have a few stairs. One is coming off the Skydance Bridge for those who want to make a beeline to the soccer field. But the accessible route actually curves down and ends up at the Sports Pavilion. And then between the different courts, we have stairs that also have an accessible route. This diagram, the gray lines are all the easements throughout the site. We have a big utility easement from OG&E on 10th Street from the high voltage overhead wires that we have to keep access to, and also easements around the Cusack lot, and some utility easements that go east to west. Next one. This is an alternate plan. So we have, just like we did in the upper park, we're hoping for a good bidding climate. So we have like 6 different bid alternates. So if bidding opportunities are in our favor, we'll able to afford more for the park. So this is the different ones that we have. Next one. Existing trees, even though we lost more trees in the southern end of the site just due to the clearing of the demolition and some remediation work, we are able to keep about 200 existing trees, which is very different than the upper park, which we only had, I believe, 4 trees from memory. So we've kept a lot of existing trees, and we're removing very few just for the soccer field, basically. Next one. These are section lines cut through the site, and we should move through these pretty quick. But basically, as I'm talking, you can just flip through these. Basically, here you can see the sports pavilion, same sort of height as the cafe in the upper park. Some of the streetscapes as we go through. Relationship between Robinson and the park as the overpass comes down. Against the wall at the interstate. The soccer fields, and we're hoping to get some shade structures along the soccer field as well. Again, the soccer field and some of the sports courts. As the earth forms come down the promenade from the Skydance Bridge, they kind of peel off in 2 different directions. And here's the hill in the southern end, about 29 feet, as I said before. So you will not miss it. Okay, so this is the 2 buildings that we have planned for the lower park. This is the sports pavilion, and the lower drawing here is the entire building. Yeah, as I said before, about 5,500 square feet roof. So there's lots of shade there for about 50 people to sit underneath. The enclosed part of the building includes restrooms, staff room, a big room for storage and equipment hire that the foundation will use, a concession area for takeout kind of snacks. And then on the right side of the drawing is a big storage area because the lower park is isolated from Union Station, which is the foundation's maintenance operation and maintenance home. This is supplemented by having a bigger storage area in this building and also 2 dumpsters enclosed there. So the look and feel is the same variation of the upper park. So the buildings all look like a part of the same family. Ribbed standing seam. We use just traditional standing seam on the upper park, but this one will be actually ribbed. Wood finishes underneath, the same as the upper park, and the brick. So it was important in this building to actually open on all sides. So it opens onto 10th. It also opens to the soccer field, and also opens to the treed area on the north. So it's a kind of building that works 360 degrees. Let's have a look at it in elevation. The next one. Simple wedge form with the outdoor seating to the right there. The slope roof has indentations to hide all the equipment inside the roof, much like the upper park, and room for signage. So let's go to the lower park. So this is a different scale. So this is drawn at a larger scale than the other building. So it appears bigger, but it's actually not. It's slightly smaller. The canopy here is just under 3,000 square feet. And the internal build out is about 1,300 square feet. But again, restrooms, smaller staff area, and small equipment storage, and also a dumpster. So this is a building that is in the adult package. We hope we can afford it when we go out to bid, but we're ready to go, and fingers crossed. So yeah, much the same as the finishes again as the upper park. And just in conclusion, it is the same family of street furniture, park furniture, and signage that will be continuous all the way through from upper and lower park. So we're very excited. We look forward to your comments and making our way through the approval process. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gavin, for the presentation. I think everybody's excited to see this last part of the park completed. The first part was great. So are there any comments or questions from the committee for Gavin? Okay. Well, we'll move on to item 3, cases withdrawn. There are none. Item 4, continuance request. There are none. Consent docket, item number 5, there are none. Item 6, cases for individual consideration. There are none. Item 7, other business, or A, item A is CE-01018 at 1023 South Robinson Avenue. Laura?
Good morning, Laura Griggs, Planning Department. This is a request to close alleys and streets for the lower park. It does include streets and alleys that are no longer physically present and in fact might be included in part of I-40, but the city's consultant is including all of that just to kind of clear everything up. So you will note in the staff report I referenced, there's been several presentations. You've had one today, and you've literally had one every 2 years. You've had a presentation on the lower park. The only things to date that the committee has done in this area was back in January 2018 when we had several demolitions, you might recall. And so since that time, all of those demolitions approved by committee and approved administratively by staff have taken place. So all of the structures have been removed. Cameron, if you could go back to the second, that one right there, that would be great. So this slide in question hopefully will help illustrate the information that was provided in your packet. The red are the physical streets that you can see that they're proposing to be closed, and the green are the alleys. When you drive by it, the only way you can actually tell there were alleys platted is where the power poles are, because the alleys physically were never put in those locations. Staff pointed out in the staff report that Scenic River is different than any other design district in that we have a maximum by ordinance block length of 650 feet. In the downtown design district, it's just a guideline, but in Scenic River, it is a regulation. This area is unique in that it is zoned a downtown zoning, DTD2, and there's some DBD in there, but it also is in the Scenic River overlay. And because it is in both, the ordinance requires it goes through Scenic River. I referenced in the staff report that similar to other projects to the north of this, the only way that the city could complete the project, like the convention center, which is a very large building, and in this case a large park, which we want to connect down to the river, would be to actually close and subsequently vacate the streets and alleys. And realizing that the intent is to preserve the traditional block sizes to allow for this project, which has been on the books for quite some time, would result in the need to subsequently get a variance to exceed the block lengths, because we have a block length of about 2,000 feet, I believe, down Robinson. And in thinking about this project, I was thinking that in Scenic River, the concern would be not blocking access to the river to the citizens. Well, what we're actually doing with this project is we're enhancing people's ability to get to the river. We're connecting all the way from the boulevard through the Scissortail Park, across the bridge, and down across this park to get people down to the river. So there is no allowance for the city to do that without getting a variance. And because of that, the staff is recommending approval of the closure of these streets and alleys. And we acknowledge that we have received the official CA application for the lower park. It came in too late to be on this agenda, but it is on your next month's meeting agenda. And so at that time, there will be a discussion and recommendation on the required variance. So at this time, as I said, staff is recommending approval, making a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission for closing these streets and alleys for the lower park. And once you finish with questions for me, we have the applicant, Johnson and Associates, is on the line that could answer any questions that you might have today.
Okay, thank you, Laura. Are there any questions, Laura?
This is Barbara. I have one question. I noticed that there's this little notch out there. Cusac's Meat, I guess, owns that piece of property, and we weren't able to negotiate it into the park area. And I see that we're closing the street Southwest 11th as well as Southwest 12th. Is there any benefit to keeping the west side of those streets open for access for whoever purchases that until such time that the city is able to acquire it?
As a staff person who hasn't been involved in any discussions about that, I don't know if there were any pros and cons pointed out when they made that decision. One concern I would have as a planner if they came in to just close half of that street is maneuverability, the ability to turn around. If they kept half the street, does that mean then they'd have to keep a cul-de-sac? I honestly don't know the answer to that question. The benefit to Mr. Cusack is that as the adjacent property owner, he will actually physically get half of the street. So if you look at that drawing that's up on the screen right now, there's a red line above and below and a green line on the side, which is the alley. So adjacent property owners get half of that right away. So his property will actually be made a little bigger. So that one way to look at it is that there is a benefit to him for this action. If you've been out there, you'll see that he does have his property up for sale.
All right, I just wanted to pose the question, since it maps money, it's for the benefit of the public, and I don't know if it would be hindrance for that property should it never be sold or given to the city to fill in as part of the park. And so it might be a disadvantage for them. You did mention that the alley right there, if I understood correctly, is not paved and it's only identifiable by the power poles. So I understand your comment about the cul-de-sac. It's not like someone can come into Southwest 11th and turn through the alley and exit on 12th. It was just a thought I had. Whether it means anything to, if it's any benefit for that person who purchases that piece of property, whether Mr. Cusack keeps it or not.
Okay, are there any questions for the applicant? For, I guess, Tim Johnson, you're on the line. Do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'd like to add in response to the comment about the property, the Cusack property. So they're actually gaining quite a bit of square footage that will actually be available for them to sell. And so there's an advantage to them. And then the reverse advantage would be for the city to gain the equal amount of square footage to the park area that is not paved or hard surface. So I think it's a benefit to both sides. I did speak to a representative of Cusack who received notice on the application, and they just confirmed, they wanted to confirm that the half the street would go to their square footage, and I confirmed that. And Laura, has anybody signed up to speak against this or protest?
I have not received anything. We have some callers on the line that I don't recognize their name. So I was just going to suggest when you get finished that the chair ask if anybody else is here to speak on this.
Okay, thank you. So one other thing I'll add is that all of these vacated alleys and easements will remain as reserves, easement reserves. So there are some utilities in there, there's water lines, there's sewer lines, some storm drainage, and as we mentioned, the power lines, which will be relocated. But they'll remain as reserves until those utilities go away at some time in the future. Then the reserve can be lifted should future improvements to the park want to utilize that right-of-way space. But it's basically to clear the path to allow for what Gavin has presented and the landscaping proposed in the park project to be installed uninterrupted. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any other questions for Tim? Thank you, Tim. Are there any comments or questions from the public? Okay. The chair would entertain a motion.
This is John Postic. Apologize for the delay. I was looking for the wording on the staff report. I would like to move to approve the application, here we go. I would like to move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission. Would I be, Laura, would I need to read the entire wording on the staff report?
I'd need to defer to Laura McDevitt. I don't think that he would necessarily need to read every single street name, alley, and all of that. Laura, what can you advise?
No, not everything doesn't need to be the whole agenda item. Does not need to be that. You can just say the case number. That would be sufficient.
Oh, that's a lot of static there, Laura. Thank you so much for that direction. So, John, does that help you out?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to provide a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission of this agenda item.
Okay, do we have a second?
A second.
Is that you, Jonathan?
Would you please push the motion button, please? Yes, private. Okay. And I'm opening the vote. And Mr. Chairman, I'm showing that Brian Doherty may have joined the meeting during some point. Is Brian, are you here?
Mr. Doherty, I just unmuted you. This is Laura. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I've been hearing everything. I just could not. And I am in favor.
So, okay. So when did you come into the meetings, please, sir?
At the very, very beginning, and then I got bumped off, and then I got right back on. But I've just been listening to all the presentations.
Okay.
What is your vote for this motion?
Thank you. And you're voting aye on this motion.
Yes.
And I don't have a showing on Barbara Larson. Is Barbara
My,
still on the
my,
call?
my screen is stuck.
Okay, are you voting for it?
I am.
I'll vote for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion approved. Thank you, Mark.
There we go.
Okay.
Yes, we're ready to move on now.
Okay, we'll go to item 7B, SPUD-01214 at 1512 South Rockwood Avenue.
Hi, Laura Griggs again with the Planning Department. This is a requested rezoning for a simplified plan unit development on a currently vacant tract of land that previously had a house on it that burned a few years ago. It's located on the edge of a residential neighborhood along Southwest 15th Street at South Rockwood Avenue. To the south is existing industrial buildings that you're seeing on the screen right there. And it is just east of actual stockyards area. The request before you is for a modified neighborhood business district zoning, which is not one that I was as familiar with at all. And this is very low intense type uses, which are very appropriate on the outskirts of a neighborhood adjacent to a 4-lane road that I'm sure has pretty high traffic volumes. And so they've listed some specific uses. The primary one that they're interested in is the automotive and equipment, cleaning, repairs, light equipment, and there are conditional requirements for that, which they're acknowledging that they will meet those. There's some other uses that they're including as well, which are very low and intense type uses. So in the staff report, I discussed that the fact that some of the uses they were asking for are allowed as conditional uses. What they're proposing in staff's opinion was not going to be a detriment to the adjacent neighborhood. There's adjacent and across the street vacant tracts of land, which obviously would be developed with something at some point in the future, which could be similar to what's being proposed here. One of the reasons staff was supportive of this is the fact that allowing businesses that could serve the adjacent neighborhood is a real positive in an area it's an older neighborhood. And as you drive through, you can see both the good and the bad, and you can see people who are really trying to make a difference in the neighborhood. So redeveloping this corner piece could really help. Just immediately to the north of it, you're looking at the side of a vacant structure, and possibly development of this could actually start dominoing into the neighborhood and provide a positive impact. One intent of the Stockyard River District, and I quoted this in the staff report, is to enhance and encourage reinvestment in existing Stockyards River neighborhoods. And I feel that that's exactly what this application is proposing to do. And staff is supportive of this and recommends that the committee provide a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission. The applicant's wife is on the line with us today, Syrian, and I'm going to unmute you, Syrian, but we'll see if the committee has any questions for me before the chair calls on you.
Any questions for Laura? Okay, Laura, go ahead.
So the applicant's wife, Syrian, is on and can answer any questions that you might have. The applicant is also on, Samil, and his wife is his interpreter.
Okay, are there any questions from the committee for the applicant? Okay, the chair would entertain a motion then.
I would like to make a motion to provide a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Dana.
On the basis that this project complies with the intent of the Scenic River Overlay Design Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section D of the staff report.
This is John Postic. I second that motion.
Thank you, John.
Could both of you please, there we go. Got it.
Okay, item B, motion approved.
Brian Doherty, how did you vote?
He's on mute.
I'm
Mr.
in favor.
Mr. Doty, I just unmuted you.
Okay, I am in favor of it.
Right, thank you.
Okay. That item passed. Item 8, we've gone through. Item 8B, anything on that, Laura?
Oh, sorry. Let me get. No, and just unless if anybody has any questions.
Okay.
You might be excited about the surf machine. I don't know if you're surfers or not, but you'll soon be able to surf down on the river.
Looks pretty cool. Might get hurt though.
Yes.
Okay. Item 8C, comments from planning staff.
Thank you all for joining us today, and I think we still have a few glitches, and we'll work with those of you that weren't able to get on PrimeGov so that next month's meeting will go even smoother. We do have a meeting next month. We have items on the agenda, so make sure you check your calendar and ink it in since it's going to happen. And thank you to all the other staff that's helping us out because we can't do this by ourselves now.
Yeah. Item 8D, comments from committee members. I would like to ditto what Laura said. Just thank you for all your work. It's been helpful for us doing this remotely, and I know that takes a lot of effort, especially for us that are not so tech savvy. So, item 8E, next meeting date, as Laura said, June 4th, 2020. And with that, I'll call the meeting adjourned.